because I'm doing everything he's saying is important. And so thank you, Louis, for giving my direction in life. I planted corn 20 years ago. Before that, I had no ideas about planting, or, I like to go on the mountains, go fishing with my dad, camping, backpacking, hiking, these kinds of things, outdoor experience, but it wasn't a foundational type of experience Louis is talking about. Then I planted corn, and that was Jaime's fault, actually. I'm in the circle here with some of the people whose it's their fault I'm successful at what I'm doing. So, thanks, I think. No, I know. Yeah, it's true. I planted that blue corn field, and when they were talking about that community garden in Larazolo, I didn't know anything about gardening. I didn't know anything about acequias. I didn't know anything about blue corn. I didn't know about atole. I knew about chaquehue. My grandma gave me white cornmeal for breakfast all the time. But that wasn't my value system. My value system was I liked really smooth concrete for skateboarding. I liked a really reliable electrical system that wouldn't blow out when we plugged in all our amps, all our PA systems, and everything to make loud punk rock music. Then I planted corn, and it was a homecoming for me. That morning of planting that corn, I knew that the rest of my future was defined. And I'm happy to say it doesn't. I've been in California, I've been in Albuquerque, I've been in Chimayo, I've been in Taos. Everywhere I've been in springtime since then, I have planted corn. I planted corn on the grounds of DQ University when I was at Davis against the recommendations of my professor. But I took that direction. Once I started planting corn, I became interested in all other aspects of my life. I was in college studying biology, working with some ecologists, and I started to look at the act of planting corn the same way as maybe elk would look at the act of grazing, or a mountain lion would look at the act of hunting. To me, planting, taking care of soils, taking care of seeds is the foundation for what would be the niche space of a human being. We're the place with our free will, with all these technology and all these economies and all this stuff, this mess that we find ourselves in, to where now we have to define what it means to be a human being. All the other animals know what it means to be animals. It was my other teacher, Clayton, who taught me that all the animals were given instructions, and they're all following their original instructions. We could call that, in a scientific sense, DNA. But it's us human beings that got lost along the way, which, we can look at it as a blessing in disguise. It's coming at consciousness through the back door. And that's indeed what we're doing. This is a learning experience. The Mother Earth is still our teacher, but she's allowing us to make mistakes and teach ourselves. So it was fundamental to me to start planting corn and start asking questions like, who am I? And what am I supposed to be doing? So at that point, I got more interested in my own history. At that point, I became interested in things like the land grants, the acequias. And with that, you get involved in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848. So that's something I share with my Native American brothers in terms of ancestors, in terms of treaties. But the difference is where the Uncle Sam has given the Native Americans all of 5 minutes to honor the treaty. They've given us all of 5 seconds to honor ours. All these pueblos here in New Mexico are not reservations. They're mercedes. They're land grants. They were given and defined by Spanish law. I am an heir to multiple land grants defined by Spanish law that were supposed to be protected by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. I have no rights to any of the lands that were historically under the management of my great-great-great-grandfathers. So, I started asking all these questions. What's a person supposed to do, with all these issues? Well, first of all, I had to look inward. And again, back to the history. It's an interesting history I have that I'm able to even be sitting here because, the census would call me white, Hispanic. And I always check the boxes other. But, when I became interested in my own history, it was because I was planting corn and establishing a land base. And, people know me as Miguel Santistevan. So, my Santistevan, that's an old name. I had a guy from Española tell me that somewhere us Santistevans were superior to the Naranjos because us Santistevans mixed with the Indians. Somewhere. I wasn't taught that from my Santistevan side, but on my Trujillo side, I know that's my mom's side. Left Chimayo in the 1820s and hid out in Taos Pueblo and married my great-great-great-grandmother from Taos Pueblo named Cayetana. And the reason he left Chimayo is because he was part of an armed militia against the Mexican establishment of this territory. We were New Spain prior to the 1820s. Then Mexico down south decided to make this Mexico. And all that meant for us on the frontier was that our taxes were doubled. And so the military would come every year to collect taxes. They could not collect taxes north of Santa Fe because all of us mountain people wouldn't have it. And that was my great-great-great-grandfather, Manuel Trujillo, was a wanted man after those militias were crushed. And he hid out in Taos Pueblo and married my great-great-great-grandmother. Which was interesting then, he got kicked out of the Pueblo. And so they moved on to the land that I live on now, which was actually originally granted to my Santistevan lineage. The first land grant here in Taos was the San Fernandez land grant. And that was granted to my great-great-great-great-grandfather Juan Santistevan and some of his brothers. Then they moved and created the La Loma land grant over here, and so they lost title to their original land grant, which I then gained title from my Trujillo lineage. So those are pretty interesting stories to think about where a person is from. It's also interesting to think that in those Spanish times you could not own land that you didn't live on. It was against the law. I like that law. Solve a lot of problems for us in Taos, right, and in Santa Fe, right? We'd either have to get to know Rumsfeld as a neighbor, or else he'd have to just go live somewhere else and own that land instead of X number of ranches in this area. But it wouldn't be so bad if people would just take care of the resource. So as I was coming into this consciousness, I wanted to figure out how do we take care of this situation. I remember very clearly on a winter morning in 2006, I had coffee with Clayton over there. We were talking about throwing a conference, a land, water, and culture conference with us. What should I call myself? I like to call myself Indo-Hispano. Indo for indigenous and Hispano for Hispano. That's what my grandfather called himself, Hispano. Which, by the way, my grandfather I learned spoke Tiwa.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah. We used to hire guys from the Pueblo and they used to plaster and stuff. So, and that's another story, now, I don't speak Tiwa and I don't go, we don't sit at each other's tables like they did in my grandfather's day. So our social fabric has unwound. And watching the social fabric unwind is why I was having coffee with Clayton some morning about 7 years ago, 2006. Talking about all the stuff going on in the world, all this stuff we were seeing. In the conversation, it came up that there was such a thing as a genetically engineered corn that had a spermicide in it. They don't just genetically engineer corn for herbicide tolerance or to confer pesticide within the body of the corn itself. They're also doing experiments on making pharmaceuticals within the genetic structure of the corn, pharmaceutical, drugs and such, industrial applications, adhesives in the corn. And we found out they were doing this to the corn, knowing that this is the mother corn, the teacher, which is interesting that she's still a teacher. She's the one behind all this genetic engineering, trying to get us to understand how awesome everything is, but how delicate and sacred it is at the same time. So we're in the middle of that lesson, is my personal belief. So we threw this conference to address these issues because in my Indo-Hispano communities and the Native American communities, our issues are the same. Are we working the land like we used to? Are we of clear heart and mind as we used to? Or are we afflicted with things like drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence, and these kinds of things? It doesn't matter if you're on the Pueblo or on the Acequia. We have these problems. Then we start to hear reports of what's going on, outside, that they're messing with the corn. And knowing that corn is wind pollinated. And knowing that if we were to ask respectfully, where is that corn that you guys are manipulating? We don't want that to cross-pollinate with our corn. That they are not even legally required, nor do they have the desire to let us know. They call that CBI, Confidential Business Information. And if you do a Freedom of Information Act, they'll tell you what it is in the general area in terms of the county it's located, how many acres, but they won't tell you what it is or exactly where it is, because that's CBI. So we said we got to make some type of statement about this. A declaration, if you will. So we started to draft the declaration. That declaration underwent 9 revisions. I have all 9 of them. I'm waiting for somebody to ask me to buy movie rights or something on the story. Then they can see all the revisions. It'll make a great feature-length film at Sundance. Any filmmaker, hey, there's the filmmaker right there. Look, here's some of the footage. So we made this declaration. Whereas, be it resolved. You can go to the declaration, ask me for my card. It has the web address on the back. We were going to show it to you, but here's our technology. So, but the declaration is a pretty profound statement. It was then taken by Louis, in fact, first it got invited us to the Slow Food Conference in 2007. Then it was taken to, thanks to Winona. And then it was taken to Bonn, Germany, incorporated into the United Nations Statement on Indigenous Peoples' Rights or something like that, right? Then it was taken to Anchorage, Alaska for Indigenous Peoples Summit on Climate Change. So the work we did with the declaration went the distance. That's something that we're all proud of, that we did that together. Obama and his wife have a copy. Louis put it in her hands. So, the declaration for us, we drafted it in 2006. In 2007, it became a memorial in the legislature. Louis and I, worked on that. That was the first time I ever put on a 3-piece suit. And, and that's the only time I bust out a 3-piece suit. Because I learned somewhere when you go to battle, you want to look like your enemy. That way they don't perceive you as a threat. So that's why I have a 3-piece suit from Dillard's. And so then we did that in 2007. In 2008, even though in the memorial it said The farmers of New Mexico, acequia farmers, Pueblo farmers, do not appreciate this genetic engineering. You can read the language yourself. You can email me. I'll send you all this documentation. And but in 2008, our legislature funded the genetic engineering of Chile by New Mexico State University. In 2009, that rattled the hornet's nest, and now, whereas it was just us that, as far as we could tell, it was just us that was addressing these issues, now all these other groups came to the forefront to help in this struggle. So they drafted this piece of legislation called the Farmer Protection Act, 2009. The Farmer Protection Act was awesome. It was so awesome, I was sure when I read it before it was even known that this thing was never going to see the light of day. Because it would have allowed us to sue the biotech corporations. And I'm for that. But see, I like making statements. I like, putting it out there, but I don't have time to spin my wheels or waste. If I'm going to do this, I want to win. So I told them, I said, this Farmer Protection Act, it's beautiful, but it's way too comprehensive. It's way too advanced for the mentality of our legislature. Because they don't even understand this issue. So I was right. And unfortunately, that Farmer Protection Act lived about 5 minutes in one committee and was buried. So then they came back in 2010. This Farmers Protection Act was stripped down. And again, went through the legislative process. We went through committee. It was interesting. The day it got killed was in 2010. It was exactly 4 years later, Valentine's Day. I drafted the first draft of the Seed Sovereignty Declaration on Valentine's Day in 2006. And on Valentine's Day of 2010, I was trying to testify for the Farmer Protection Act, where it was killed in Conservation Committee, chaired by Bernadette Sanchez, who was the senator who introduced the genetic engineering of Chile 2 years before. So she wasn't very appreciative of our idea to begin with. And she didn't let me speak. She didn't let any of our side speak, like Louis said. All the other guys got to speak, but we had 2 expert witnesses waiting for our turn. We never got our turn, and they killed it. 2011, Farmer Protection Act again. This time, it made it to the floor. So the third time's a charm. Interestingly, it was a tie vote. So then there was a motion to vote again. Then they voted again, but in the meantime, from Tuesday, the initial tie vote, till Friday, the propaganda machine went heavy, and it got killed on the floor because people had all kinds of misinformation that, we as grassroots people could not compete with the lobbyist machine that has the power and the resources to send out misinformation. So that was Farmer Protection Act. Then we got in on this idea of labeling. So that's where New Mexico's at now, as far as I know. I hear that Farmer Protection Act is coming back. But me personally, I've lost my faith in this person called Uncle Sam and all of his affiliates. Because another hat I wear is I'm the president of my acequia. I'm the chairman of Acequia Madre del Sur de Rio de Don Fernando de Taos. So I work a lot on the water issues. One of the things that's going to go down in history that I'm going to carry with me and wonder how history's going to write about me is I signed the Abeta Water Settlement. And, a signature's a big deal in American law. And I didn't want to sign it. But I knew if I didn't sign it, that I was going against the process that my acequia leadership had been engaged in for 20 years. And I didn't want to be the renegade black sheep, I just got out of college, I just moved back to Taos. Now I'm on the Taos Valley Acequia Association. And yeah, while you guys are over there negotiating water rights and lawyers and all this stuff. Yeah, I know I was skateboarding, playing drums in a punk rock band, but now I'm going to be the monkey wrench in this process. I wasn't going to be that person. I told them while I was signing it that I didn't believe in it, but that I believe in us as a community, and that I'm still willing to work with the other Acequia leadership to work on our water issues. It's not a day that goes by that I don't think in regret of doing that, and where I ended up in the crossroads of having to sign that or not sign that. But here's the fact of the matter, and I think it's this way with all things, treaties and agreements with governments and these types of situations. Uncle Sam follows his laws when it's convenient to Uncle Sam. Period. And I know this through the water law. In New Mexico, we have a thing called priority administration. It means first in time, first in right. It means that all the Native American groups who were here prior to any European influence can claim the water that they used in those times. And they have access to the water first. Then, next in time, next in right. So usually that's the Acequias, right? Here came the Spanish and they put the Acequias. So we're second. Everybody else is then third, fighting for the water rights that remain. So that's a struggle we're involved with in water. If you live near a pueblo, you got to figure out, and you're an Acequia, you got to figure out how you guys are going to get along with the water that exists. So that's what the Abeta water settlement is. That's the part I signed that I believed in. That the pueblo and the Acequia sat down for 20 years and figured this out. 20 years! That's why I signed it. Because who am I to be a monkey wrench into something that took 20 years? Even though I didn't believe in it. But because the reason I don't believe in it is because the water doesn't exist. They're talking about water that doesn't exist. And to make us happy, us Acequias, who rely on surface water, which means snow melt, which means snowfall, which means good winter, none of which we ever have, like in the last 5 years, you know, that's our irrigation water. So my Acequia goes dry in June, when it should be running all the way till October. There's just no water in the river. So to deal with that, some genius in the Bureau of Reclamation came up with the idea that we're going to drill mitigation wells. 6 wells that are more than 2,000 feet deep to suck water out of the deep aquifer and dump it in the river for the use of Acequia irrigators. I can't agree with that. That's not an Acequia. An Acequia is, like I said, snowfall, snow melt, surface irrigation, a community taking care of the water. It is not going to a pump house and flipping a switch to get your 18 acre-feet of water when you need it. But the Acequias felt like they were backed in a corner, so they did that. That's not sustainable. So that's ridiculous, but that's not even what I'm talking about. What I'm really talking about is if you're going to administer water rights first in time, first in right, and you've defined the laws and you've defined the landscapes of how this thing is going to be dealt, then just follow your law. If you're going to go through all this grandiose procedure to create laws and law libraries and crank out lawyers and pay them all kinds of money and do Supreme Courts this and justices that and judge this and all that, then do it. Do it then. Let's see. Honor your treaties. Honor your water law. Here's the example. The city of Las Vegas.
Mexico or?
New Mexico. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that other one. I was already getting depressed, yeah. At least in mine, I have some solutions in sight. Over there, I don't know. But anyways, Las Vegas, New Mexico. Well, they're not in proximity to any pueblos. So who gets the first water rights? The Acequias. The Acequias are downstream from the city of Las Vegas. So the Acequias aren't getting any water. The city of Las Vegas takes all of the Gainas River and puts it in Story Lake for use by the city. The Acequias come to the city and say, hey, we'd like to have a day or two of water. Can you let the river go down and we can irrigate? Anyways, the law's on our side. We have the priority water right. The city of Las Vegas says, no, you can take what comes out of our sewage treatment plant and irrigate any day. There's always water coming out of the sewage treatment plant. The Acequias go, no. Can we please have the water for a day or a weekend, a couple times a month? Anyways, we have the priority water right. And we understand you guys need to fill up your Story Lake and do this, that, and the other because our sons, daughters, cousins, nieces, nephews, family members are living in the city of Las Vegas. We don't want to deny them the opportunity to take a shower, but we would like to access our property rights and irrigate. Well, the law should be clear. The law is clear. The Acequias have the older water right. They shouldn't have to ask. They should tell. That's what the law says. But they went and said, hey, our family lives in the city. Can we just have some water? State engineer comes back and says, oh, no. This is way too complicated a situation for me to deal with by myself. Now you guys need a water master to figure this out for you, and you guys are going to pay for it. So now the water master is making recommendations on the situation that is clear. And the treaties are the same way. I have no faith, hey, I will. My suit is there, it's pressed, it's clean, it's ready to go. Let's go. Let's go put it on. Let's go throw some punches. Let's do what's right for the community. Let's go educate. I'm with you. But I don't have faith in that. I don't believe in it. Because it's not working. It hasn't been working for a long time. It's not working now, and I don't think it's going to work. I think history repeats itself, and we are unfortunately watching the collapse of this empire. If you want to go and we'll go try and defend the Constitution of the United States, I'm with you. Let's do it. It is worth fighting for, especially if you believe in it. But I do that after I plant corn with kids. I do that after I make sure kids have seeds. And like Louis said, I'm not getting press coverage on my activities. But I feel I am one of the most sovereign people in Taos County, creating the most sovereignty. This is my second year of planting a garden at the elementary school. I planted that garden. I had seeds in the hands of 600 elementary kids. Every kid got to plant in that field. We harvested that field right after they planted their little spot. They walked to the end of the row, and I gave every kid enough seed, not from the store, not from seed packets, my seed. Seed I've been growing from here. Corn, beans, and squash. I gave every kid, 600 kids, enough seed to plant a 10 by 10 garden of their own. And I'm happy to say this is our second year. When I harvested that field, and I didn't harvest, I have a broken leg. But I have kids. I have kids who now are infinitely more powerful than me. Because I can sit back with a broken leg and watch it all get done anyways. I'm not even needed anymore. Right? Because it's happening. And I'm happy to say we made 2 hornadas of chicos with kids. The kids built their own horno. That was last summer. They made 2 rounds of chicos, which if you don't know what chicos are, is we harvest the corn when it's sweet. I think they call that green corn in the Midwest. So we harvest it in the milky stage and we cook it in the mud oven overnight. We mud it all up, heat up the horno, and then we open it up in the morning and pull that corn out and dehydrate it. Cook it up with some meat as a stew, or I like to put my chicos in my beans. So it's part of the beans when we make beans. But it's an age-old food tradition from northern New Mexico, which is very interesting because the corn is Native American, of course, but the horno is Arabic. The horno mud oven, a lot of people think because they bought a postcard at the Allsups and it has Taos Pueblo with the horno on there, that the Native Americans invented the horno. But the horno was brought by the Moors who accompanied the Spanish. So I'd like to honor Zia's request that we never use their sacred Zia symbol as the state flag and replace our symbol on the flag with an Horno. That's New Mexico. Why? Because where else are you going to find people cooking a native crop in an Arabic oven speaking Spanish? That's who we are, right? You go to the pueblo and they're cooking what in the horno? Bread that came from wheat that was domesticated, outside of Turkey in the old world. So that's our multiculturalism. But again, back to the original idea I was expressing, to me it's ecology. It's what we do as human beings. Bears know when it's time to hunt, when it's time to mate, and when it's time to sleep. And human beings should know when it's time to plant, when it's time to harvest, when it's time to process, when it's time to do all of these activities if we're going to reclaim our humanness. So I'm waiting to see what happens in the political realm. I just heard that we're winning all kinds of victories. The Monsanto Protection Act was killed in the budget bill. Mexico made some decision, Supreme Court, that no GMO is going to be planted anymore in certain areas. India is filing a lawsuit on biopiracy against Monsanto. So, I'm not giving up. I'm by no means detaching from the struggle that would be called the status quo struggle. But like I say, that struggle is secondary to the first struggle, which is reclaiming my identity as a human being, which means I have a relationship with my food, with my seeds, with the animals that provide the meat and the hides or whatever for my needs, or a relationship with my soil, a relationship with the seasons, with my fuel needs, my energy needs. To me, that's what sovereignty means. I could go to the legislature and talk sovereignty and I'll be laughed out of there. But all of us have this idea of sovereignty. And to me, it's that window into, what is the ecology of a human being? What are we really supposed to be doing here? And I'm looking around, I see all colors of faces, all colors of eyes. All of us have great, great, great grandmothers who knew all this stuff, knew how to heal us from just these weeds, knew what crops to grow, how to grow them, and how to cook them so they taste good. It doesn't matter where you come from. If you came from south to north, you were bringing the corn and teaching it how to grow over here. If you came from east to west, then you had seeds sown in the hems of your skirts or hidden in certain areas so that when you got to this new world that you could have the same type of food and the same type of identity you had in the mother country. So to me, that's the struggle, is reclaiming our humanness in terms of ecology. What's our source of food, our source of water, our source of energy, and really getting a handle on that. And I think that's how we win the struggle. That said, I still have a fantasy of us storming the legislature and making some sense over there. And the greatest thing, I don't care about global GMO labeling in New Mexico. It's going to be meaningless. If California would have done it, all right. You got to pay attention to California. They're like the 5th largest economy in the world. But I told these people, and they're doing GMO labeling in New Mexico. That's not what we need right now.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. If anyone's interested in the seed workshop that's going to start on May 10 right now, if anyone's interested. Thank you.
Nice.
With Clayton.
Clayton, he's the man. He's the reason I'm saving seeds. Clayton, Emilio, Louis. These guys are responsible for my corruption. Oh yeah, and Jaime too. So, the fantasy I have for New Mexico is GMO labeling, but for Chile. And Chile only, to start. I don't know why everybody wants to take on the big prize. I'm into incremental change. One child at a time is how I see it when I'm planting. I get one kid at a time who comes back to me and says, "Hey, mister, are you going to give us more corn? I grew all the corn that you gave me, but my dog ate it, and I need more." That's the kind of change I believe in, baby steps. I didn't think we should be trying to go for GMO labeling at our New Mexico State Legislature. We're a small economy. If they were going to come back and say that's going to hurt your local farmers, there's no way to disprove that. You know, so you're over there kind of